Hello my friends, welcome back to another yoga class. Today we're going to be talking about some philosophy. So if you're curious, get into something comfy, maybe get a glass of water or a tea or a coffee, and yeah, we'll get into it. So we're going to be talking about the 8 limbs of yoga according to Patanjali, or otherwise known as Ashtanga. And this is one of kind of the more significant frameworks within yoga philosophy, depending on what lineage of yoga you come from. But I thought I'll give a bit of background about Patanjali. So he was this great sage from many thousands of years ago. Some people say even up to 6,000 years ago, and he would tell these sutras, these threads of wisdom about philosophy to his students, and then his students would pass it down, and it's, generation by generation, these pieces of wisdom would be passed on. And it's so amazing that even to this day we are able to tap into that wisdom and how it's still so relevant in this modern world. It's just crazy to me. But anyway, it wasn't until a couple of thousand years later where these threads of wisdom were written down. And the framework that he came up with, or one of them, were the 8 limbs of yoga. And this is all leading up into the 8th limb, which is samadhi. Samadhi is the state of kind of enlightenment, of total awareness and understanding and concentration and bliss. And some people consider that all of the 8 limbs, the 8 kind of parts of yoga, kind of lead up to this state. Whether it's step by step or, kind of you can take one by each separately is up to discussion. We won't discuss that today. But yeah, I'll be referencing this book a little bit. And if you are curious about learning more, then have a look into the book. So, by the practice of the limbs of yoga, the impurities dwindle away and there dawns the light of wisdom, leading to discriminative discernment. So by practicing these 8 limbs of yoga, the impurities in the mind, the things that cloud our clarity about the world and who we are, dwindle away, and there dawns the wisdom that we can access. Okay, so we will go into the 8 limbs of yoga. The first limb is yama, and there are 5 of them. These are kind of qualities and guidelines for how we interact with the world. And if you were here in December and January, we did a philosophy series going over the yamas and the niyamas. So anyway, there are 5 of them. The second limb is niyama, and these are more kind of internal guidelines, internal values. The third limb is asana, which is probably what most people think of as yoga. So that's the more movement part of practice. Whew, it's a bit windy, but the more movement part of practice. And it's really funny that the Western society has taken this asana as what yoga is, whereas it's actually a very small part of yoga. In fact, there's only about 2 or 3 sutras about movement, about asana in this whole book, where there's like 150. After asana, there is pranayama, and pranayama, you also might know, considers the breath work as that is a way that we can influence our prana, our life force, that is all within us. The 5th limb of yoga is pratyahara, or sense withdrawal. And this is not necessarily something that is a practice like asana or pranayama. It is a state of being that can happen from those practices. The 6th limb is dharana, which is concentration. Getting a little bit internal here. Number 7 is dhyana, which is meditation. Basically like a step further from dharana. And samadhi. Samadhi is that state of contemplation, of absorption, of complete focus and enlightenment that I kind of talked about before. So we'll go through each limb of yoga one by one. We won't go into too much depth, but it just gives you a little bit of understanding of, how everything kind of fits together. So going back to our yamas, so there are 5 of them. The first one is ahimsa, or non-violence, and this relates to us not being violent to people around us, the animals around us, nature around us, being really kind, but also being non-violent to ourselves. That includes words, it includes actions, but also thoughts. The second yama is truthfulness, or satya, and this means being truthful with our words, being truthful with our actions again, and not saying anything that is dishonest to ourselves or to others. The third yama is asteya, or non-stealing. So not taking anything that is ours. That doesn't necessarily mean just material items, but that could mean ideas or thoughts or of the like. The fourth yama is Brahma Charia, and that basically means to abstain from practices that are distracting or drain your energy. And so they talk a lot about abstinence from sex in this book. You can kind of tell it was written before the 2000s at least, but this can relate to anything. It could be social media, it could be technology, it could be sex, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs. Just abstaining and not delving into those practices that draw us away from the goal of yoga. The final yama is aparigraha, which is non-greed. So not being greedy with what we take from others or the earth, only taking what we need and making sure that there's an equal balance between giving and taking. Goodness me, it's just started to rain, but I'm going to keep going in the hopes that it will stop raining. So that's the first limb. So a bit more external focus, focusing on relationships with the world and other people. The niyamas are more internal focus. We're focusing more on values that we can practice within. So the first one is saucha, or purity or cleanliness. So being clean with our physical self, making sure our environment is clean as well. Pardon me. But that also means being clean with our thoughts and our practices, letting go of anything that's kind of clogging us up or dragging us down, or if we're feeling really attached to something, just cleaning that away. The second niyama is Santosa, so contentment, being content with whatever we have, being content with whatever situation our life gives us. And that can be a challenging one because we have to remember that being content doesn't mean that you don't care. You do care, but you let go of, any attachment to the outcome. The third niyama is tapas. Tapas means kind of austerity, kind of discipline. It also kind of refers to accepting pain as purification for pleasure. So understanding that pain is really important for our being. Woo! It's raining. And that it is necessary to go through pain in our life, and choosing and persevering in practices that cause us pain, because it makes us stronger on the inside. The fourth niyama is svadhyaya, and that refers to studying ourselves, and that can be through books, spiritual books. It can be through engaging with people who are more understanding, more well-known within this area. But it can also mean being able to study the self through any experience that we have in life. Our fifth niyama is Ishvara Pranidhana, and that means surrendering to a higher power or God and maybe that means dedicating all of your fruits of your actions to this higher power, this higher source, and kind of letting go of ego and trusting that it's all going to be okay. So those are the yamas and the niyamas. The next one is asana. So asana meaning kind of a posture, seat, movement, and this is responsible for allowing us to, goodness me, might actually pause the video for a moment and just, I'm getting quite cold, so I'll be back. Guys, look how cool this rainbow is. I'm gonna give you a better shot, but wow, all of that rain to this beautiful, beautiful guy. Lovely. Okay, I have a jumper. I think it does have a couple of food stains on it, so I'm sorry, but let's continue. So we were on asana, and asana is basically a way for us to lead up into that state of meditation, of deep concentration, because if we're sitting down and our body is aching and we get sick, then we aren't able to concentrate. So it's a beautiful way to be able to move, develop that initial concentration so that we can sit down for longer. And then our fourth limb of yoga is pranayama. So prana meaning our life force, and ayama meaning to expand, or another variation of that, version of that is to control. And we do that by utilizing the breath. And the kind of similar to asana, it is a way to be able to develop some more introspection, to be able to develop that concentration even deeper. This leads into our fifth limb of yoga, which is pratyahara, or sense withdrawal. Now, it's like I said before, it is not a thing that you can practice. It is a state that comes from some of the other practices. So I don't know if you've ever been in a state of flow where you just get so focused on the task at hand that you completely forget about what's happening around you. And so this is that sense of pratyahara, and allows us to delve deeper into our next limb of yoga. So this is dharana. Dharana is the initial phase of concentration, of meditation. So when you sit down and meditate and you try and focus on something, on one thing, that is meditation. Sorry, that is dharana. So when you might have heard of this or practiced this, when we say, and start to focus on your breath. Focusing on the breath being the one thing that is constant. That is dharana, that is the initial stages of concentration. This leads into dhyana, and dhyana is taking that a step further. How I can describe it is if you are in meditation for an hour, let's say, but it feels like 5 minutes. That's dhyana. It just feels like time has flown. Whereas if you were in meditation for 5 minutes and it still felt like an hour, that is still considered dharana. So it's that kind of step closer where you have a relationship with the thing that you're concentrating on. And this doesn't necessarily need to be the breath. It can be candle gazing, focusing on the candle, or you can look at the sun, you can think of an object, you can think of a picture, anything like that. And that kind of leads in to the final state, which is samadhi. And samadhi is this full deep concentration where you don't even realize you're in it. It's beyond the fact that you're in this relationship with one thing, you are that one thing, and you're completely present with that, and you don't have any thoughts, you're just completely in it. And within samadhi there are multiple different stages, but that's kind of roughly what it is. It's like some of the other things that we said before, like pratyahara, you can't sit down and practice samadhi. It is something that appears over time through lots of practice and of the other things, and doesn't necessarily come from just meditation. It's just well, in the way that you can sit down and practice meditation, but we can find meditation and concentration in other ways in our life, which I think is really cool. But yeah, that was a very eventful class. Goodness, lots went on. I hope that you found something of use and that I didn't ramble on too much, but let me know if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below, and if you are curious on hearing any more philosophy chats, then we do have a little bit more in Patreon, so I'll leave the link down below. But thank you so much for being here, and yeah, I'll see you next time.